What's up, everybody? So tonight is going to be a very special night. We are doing a live sound gig at a sushi restaurant of all places, and there is a band that's going to take over the joint. You know the band Minutes in Hellfire. I've featured them on this channel a few times, and pardon the shaky camera, I'm literally holding my phone by hand. So let's take a look at the gear that we have that we are bringing to the gig. Okay, so let's go over what we have. So we have a tripod right here for my steady camcorder. It's going to get a stage wide shot. I have all of my mic stands right here. And in this crate is all of the mics and cables and split snake that I am using for the show tonight. Let's open it up. You got my MXL overheads in these two crates. I have a room mic underneath there, which is a AKG C214. All of my XLRs, another microphone down there, a direct box, and underneath everything is the split snake that's going to go to the PA. We are only using the microphones tonight for the multi-track recording. Only vocals are going to the PA because, again, this is a bar. I have my mixer that's going to record the whole thing, the Tascam Model 24. I have two more additional mic stands right here. One's going to be for the hi-hat. The other one is going to be for the guitar. In this bag, I have the headphones I'm mixing on, which is going to be the Direct Sound EX29 Plus. I love these headphones. In there are also my action cams and another tripod for the action cam. Over here is my camera bag with my two Sony mirrorless cameras that are going to be handheld tonight to just capture the action. And this crate right here, this final bag is all of my microphones that I'm going to be using. And we have one final crate here that is going to be housing all of my SM57s and my kick drum mic, which is an Audix D6. We are basically all set to go, guys. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different items I need to bring to the car. And let's get moving. All right, guys, we are in the car on the way. Unfortunately, I am starting this drive just after peak rush hour on a Friday night. So to make the 30-mile drive to the restaurant where this gig is happening tonight, it's going to take about an hour and 15 minutes, but who knows, maybe traffic will be light. I have everything loaded up in the back right there, so we are all good to go, and it should be for a very interesting night. So here's how the show's going to go. There is a woman setting up a PA system, and she's doing karaoke, I think, and the band tonight is going to be the quote-unquote halftime show. What are you doing, sir? The band is going to be the halftime show tonight, and after the band's done, we're going to do more karaoke and have a Halloween-themed party. As you can see, I'm dressed as someone who doesn't give a shit about costume parties. I was going to go dress as Bob Belcher, but I didn't have time today to get the hair dye, and it's a very weird 75 degrees outside right now, and I don't want to wear gray long sweatpants. So I am in this shirt. By the way, this shirt is from Share the Burden. Check out the band. They were on the vlog a couple of weeks ago. Nicest guys in the world. But this shirt is so comfortable. It might be the most comfortable t-shirt I have. I don't know who your supplier is, Share the Burden, but this is A+ S tier comfort as far as t-shirts go. So I am now on the road. We are going to drive to the restaurant / venue for tonight, and we are going to have a good time. We are all here. Jimmy is changing his bass drum head right now. We're going to have Spencer right here on his guitars. I'm miking up this PV cab, and he's got another Marshall cab over there just for Phil. Frank's bass is going to go right over there. And 1, 2, 3 vocals. So this is the makeshift stage, and here is where I'm going to be. I'm going to put the split snake right over there. We're going to run one line back here into the console here, which is going to get multi-track recorded into Logic, and then the other end of the split snake is going to go to the PA, which is not here right now, for just the vocals. So I'm going to get set up and they'll give you a tour of the input chart when everything's done. All right, guys, let's go to the corresponding microphones and the inputs on the Snake. So the Snake is routed, the top input right here is going to PA over there, and then this output is going to the console. So let's go through around the inputs. Input 1 is kick. Input 2 is snare. This is an SM57. That's an Audix D6. Input 3 is bottom snare, and this is a Octava MK012. Rack tom is a 57. Floor tom, that's again a 57. Overhead left, and this is a MXL V63. Overhead right, same microphone. Over there is samples, that red pad. Next is bass guitar. The bass amp is not here yet, so it's going to go direct. The cable is wrapped around that chair. Guitar, this is the PV Invective cab using 57. Of course, I have tons of 57s we're using tonight. After that, we have center vocal, 58. Stage right vocal, this is, I don't even know what mic this is. I know it's a bass player's mic. This is Digital Reference DRV 100. It's probably a cheap Chinese knockoff mic because I've never heard of it. And then stage left vocal is a Pile PDM 58. It's basically a cheap Chinese rip-off of a 58. This Spencer's pedal board, this is a harmonizer, and that is it. Let's go through their PA over here. So I had the samples and the vocal mics all here. And here are all 16 inputs of the Snake on my console. When we're ready to get levels before they go on, I'm going to load up Logic, get a multi-track session going, and then we'll be good to go, guys.
Give me 1 sec, since they're already up here.
Take your time.
Okay, baby.
I just got here. I just got here. I'll be the one.
So I don't know how the footage looks right now. I mean, I'm literally using the overhead light right here, just have some form of lighting on, but my ears are ringing pretty badly. Man, that was a loud show. And I even used hearing protection, and my ears are still pretty ringy right now. But I think right now you guys want to hear how those raw tracks sound. But let's go to the studio, let's load up Logic, and take a listen to what we got. Hey guys, how's it going? So we are back in the studio here, and we're going to just get right into it. I have the session here in Logic Pro, and as you could see, we are only using 2 songs from this set. It was about a 40-minute set. I think they did like 7 songs that night. But the band only wants to use 2 songs from this set. And in my opinion, these are the 2 strongest songs and strongest performances from the set. We have Shot Down on the left here. And then on the right, we have a song called Move On. And yeah, let's get right into it. Let's analyze it. So We have a kick drum track, a snare top, a snare bottom. I was going to originally use this mic for a hi-hat, but the little miniature stand I had, quite frankly, didn't reach the hi-hat, so I used this for a bottom snare, and I'm glad I did, and I'll show you why in a second. We have a snare bus, and then a snare reverb. I'm going to go into everything that I did here in a second, but first we have a couple tom mics, tom reverb. We have our overhead left and overhead right. And then we have an overhead bus. Now this track samples, they did use a sample in the beginning of their set to intro, and they didn't use any other samples for the rest of the set, so really no need for that track. We have a bass guitar, one guitar, 1, 2, 3 vocals, and the rest are just my buses. So in the mixer right here, we have a backing vocal bus. We have a drums bus, we have a instrument bus with everything going to it, and then we have vocal. And I'm going to explain why we have everything the way it is in a second. But first, I think you guys should hear a little bit of the final product. Let's go into one of the choruses.
Think about the same old time to be. Not now, deep down. Think about the same old time to be. Not now, deep down. Think about the same old time to be. Not now, deep down. Think about the same old time to be.
Okay, so that is the finished product. As you heard, like after the main chorus, one of the backing vocals, this was Spencer. Spencer, the guitar player, he had a talk box to have that little wah 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 effect. So he left it right on his vocal track, so I just left it there. It sounded pretty good. No need to have separate processing for that. So you heard the finished track. Now let's listen to what I started with. What a difference from the finished product to the completely raw product. So let's just go right into the first batch of processing. Now, the first bit of processing I did for this live performance was I selected a plugin called Auto Align. It's made by SoundRadix, and what this does is it takes every single track that you put the plugin on. You click play and you click align and you play for about 30 to 45 seconds. And what this plugin does is it corrects, aligns, phase corrects. It does everything it can to make sure that all the tracks sound perfect with one another. Whether it's moving it back or forwards a couple samples, flipping the phase, you name it. This corrects every type of phase correction issue that you would have in raw audio. So what I did with that was I aligned everything. I edited out every bit of tom track that I didn't have. So if you look, I clearly don't have the full tom tracks here. I don't have all the vocal tracks here. I edited out what I could, and I used Auto Align, processed Auto Align, exported all of the raw tracks, and I imported them back into what I have here. And then the end result of the Auto Align is what you just heard. So with that being said, let's go to the first bit of processing, starting with the kick drum. I put on, let's solo the kick track. I put on the silencer plugin. I think it's made by Black Star Audio, I think. Yeah, it's made by Black Salt Audio, and this is one of the best de-bleeding drum isolating plugins I've ever used. It's pretty amazing. So let's play a little bit of the kick track, and then I'll just turn on the plugin and you can hear what I did. Pretty amazing, right? So by default, it turns on the reduction to minus 40 dB. I kept the bleed at 0, and the length I put it at 447. Around that time, I just want the whole transient and the whole kick drum hit to come through the processing, and all you do is lower the threshold, and the plugin does the rest. You have the tools up here to let you know what drum you want. So you have the kick, you have top snare, bottom snare, and toms. So you just select what instrument that you are trying to isolate, and the plugin does the rest. With that being said, let's move on to the sample. I did convert the kick drum to a sample. The original kick drum just wasn't sounding right, even though I used my Audix D6. It was a live environment. It didn't really sound the best, and I wanted a nice, big, fat, clicky kick drum. So I used the Slate Trigger Pack, and I used, I believe, a Chris Lord-Alge sampled kick drum. So I just converted it. Sounds great. And the next plugin on the chain is the Studer A800 tape machine. This is also the first session that I used almost all exclusively the SSL and the Universal Audio Spark plugin packages. And gotta be honest, guys, I'm not gonna go back to using just exclusively the Slate plugins. I think I have maybe just a couple of Slate plugins here, but this is mostly just the SSL and UA Spark. These things are incredible. And the best way that I discovered of how to process sampled drum tracks is to give it a little bit of analog saturation. So that's what this plugin does. And the best way to use this plugin is to use the secondary EQ. This is how it normally comes when you loaded the plugin. You load it up, and then I put everything on repro. I almost never use sync or input. I almost never use anything else other than repro. And then you can use this high and low frequency boost or reduction. That sounds great. And then this EQ right here is to give it a little bit more of a oomph in the high end before it hits the tape machine. So basically, if you have a pretty dull sounding snare drum, for instance, boost the high frequency filter on this, and it'll give you just a little bit of pizzazz in your snare drum. But anyway, I hit the kick sample in the tape machine, and then I go to the SSL native channel. And now I don't know about you guys, but I absolutely love using EQs that don't have a graphic analyzer on the plugin. Even though, yes, I do use a multimeter here in Logic. This is the stock frequency analyzer. I usually have this on the bottom right of every session I do, just to have a little bit of visualization of what the frequencies are doing with my whole mix and what I have isolated. But in general, I really don't like using EQs that have, analyzers on them. I like to EQ with my ears and not necessarily what a graph is telling me, even though I kind of am just contradicting myself here. So for this, I don't have anything going on with this. I only use it to give it that little bit of SSL saturation, and I have a high pass filter at about 55 hertz. That's it. So combine everything, and this is what my kick drum sounds like. Compare it with everything off. So let's go to my snare, and this is going to be probably the track with the most processing on it. So let's hear what the snare sounds like completely raw. First, let's hear what the top of the snare sounds like. So it's really not that bad of a snare track. Like it sounds really good. It's got a nice full sound to it. Let's hear the bottom snare. This bottom snare mic was recorded with a Octava MK012. I normally use that mic for hi-hats and center guitar speaker capture. But for this, it made for a really nice bottom snare mic. And the snare top was an SM57. So for the top, I have my FabFilter Pro MB. And this is one of the best snare bleed tricks in the book. You load up a multiband compressor, you turn it on expander mode, and basically this acts as a multiband noise gate. And here it is in effect with the snare drum. I'm going to have it off, and I'm going to turn it on. What a difference that makes. There's still a little bit of mud and a little bit of low end I need to deal with, but to just isolate the cymbal bleed, it's fantastic. And I'm going to take that one step further, and here's our friend silencer. So after the multiband anti-cymbal bleed, I'm going to put it on silencer, and that will really just isolate this snare drum. Almost sounds like a sample, and I didn't even do any sort of processing on this. So let's do the same thing now for the bottom snare. Let's turn on the Pro MB. It's not perfect. There is still a little bit of bleed from the kick drum, but really, I can't go in and isolate every single snare hit. That would just take forever in a day. So if it happens to bleed through once in a while, it just bled through. So we have the silencer on again. And here we go for the snare bottom. So now we have both snare tracks going to a snare bus, and here is where things get a little interesting. Let's hear both the top and the bottom snare combined. So right away, we have a great starting point with this. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to print this track and everything that I am doing to tape. Now I'm using humongous air quotations here, printing to tape, but this plugin really does just change everything. This is changing how I mix everything now. With this, I have the, here are my secondary EQs in the tape machine. Here are my settings here. Now I'm going to play it a little bit with it off, and then I'm going to turn it on. You hear just like a little bit squashed with the analog saturation. It adds a little bit of depth and character to it. Really, really like that. Next on my chain is the SSL channel EQ, and we got some stuff going on here. So at 460 hertz, I am reducing 8 dB. I have a boost, a shelf boost at 277 hertz by 6 dB. And I am boosting at 4.13 at 7 dB with a high pass filter at 106. So it's a lot like what Chris Lord-Alge says. Just turn knobs and see what happens. No one's gonna get hurt. So I love the SSL EQs. I love the sound that these give, and they just bring so much character to the sound of a snare drum, especially. So I'm going to have it with it off, and then I'm going to turn it on so you guys can hear what I'm doing. Just boosting it at 4.13K, that just gave it so much character. So let's bring it down, and then you could just hear it just brought so much life into the sound of that snare drum. And with the combined bottom snare mic, it just brought so much liveliness, and you can hear the snappiness of it, not to mention the fatness of that snare drum. So here is one of the only few instances where I have a slate plugin set up on my mix chain. I love the sound of the Custom Series Lift. This really is just you want some high end, turn it till it sounds good. You want some low end, turn it till it sounds good. I wanted a little more high end coming from that snare drum. The SSL was acting a little too aggressive with the high end. This is a lot more smooth of an EQ, and this brings a lot more air to the sound of the snare. Again, before and after. And then this is one of my biggest tricks. I learned this from my buddy Zach. He uses this on his snare drums all the time. The FG Bomber is so good on snare drums, and this is great on drums in general, but especially snare drums. What you do is you put it on the fat setting, bring the intensity to 50%. So basically the mix setting, you want 100% wet or dry. Bring this in the middle of 50%, and then just turn the drive up until the needle gets to the center of the bomb, and then you are good to go. So this is going to be before, and I'm going to turn it on. It's shaping up the snare drum now to be a cannon. It's bringing up the fatness, it's bringing up the boom factor of the snare drum. We're getting there. We're almost there with the snare processing, but it's starting to shape the snare drum. Then comes probably my favorite compressor to ever put on a snare drum, and that is the API 2500. I know this is a bus compressor, and you normally put this on the buses, but for a snare drum, this just brings so much heaviness and life into the snare drum. So my attack settings are 30. My ratio is 6:1. My release is 0.1 second, so I think 100 milliseconds, and the release is around 50 milliseconds. The tone, the knee is hard, the detector is normal, and the type is the new. And then I have a little bit of makeup gain here, so I'm going to play it as it is. I'm going to turn it, I'm going to have the effect off, and then we're going to hear it on. There we go. Now the snare is starting to sound like a snare drum. We have a Pro Q3 right here, just taking out a little bit of frequencies. I got a little too excited with the compression and the processing that we had now. And then finally, we have a secret weapon of mine that I like to use a lot called Drum Leveler. It's made by Sound Radix, and what this does is it takes all of your drum hits, no matter how hard the drummer hits, no matter how soft it is. And this just, as it says, it levels it out. So this will compress too loud of a hit. This will increase too loud of a hit to meet an even threshold. So all of you guys who use MIDI drums and have the output at 127 velocity, you don't need to do that anymore. So if you use analog drums and you record real drums, this will help you just level everything out. You could put this on an entire drum bus. This will detect individual transients from individual drums. But for this, for just pure accuracy standpoint, I like to put this on every individual drum track. So again, I'm going to play without it and I'm going to play with it. So that is the basics of my snare processing. So let's listen to the snare drum as it is without any processing, and then I will quickly do a and B with everything off and then everything on. Here's everything off. Everything on. So I also had the snare drum bust out to a reverb. And what I did with this, I learned this trick from Glenn Fricker, so I'll link the video where I learned this trick in the description or put it up here in the corner somewhere. Basically what this does is it gives you the Canon snare sound and gives it a little bit of reverb and a little bit of, you know, space, because as you heard just now, it sounds great, but it just sounds dry. It doesn't have any, you know, air and character to it. It doesn't have any space. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. This fixes that problem. So again, here's the snare drum as it is, and then I'm going to put on the reverb. So if you want to go a little Phil Collins, that's really how you do it. Next, I have a plate reverb. Again, this is the UA pure plate reverb, and this just adds a little bit of, you know, space to that sound. And then finally, I am taking down a lot of around 216 hertz. This is where all the fatness of the snare drum lies, and I don't want any of that on the reverb. I just want the reverb to be a reverb. I want all the fatness from the snare to come from the sound of the snare itself. Again, so here's without any processing on the reverb. And here's with the reverb. Yeah, there we go. Now that sounds like a snare drum. We're getting somewhere. When it comes to hard rock, heavy metal, and punk rock, two of the most important tracks in the entire mix are the kick and the snare drum. So once you get those sounding right, you have a very good foundation for your mix. So let's move over to toms. I'm going to go a little bit faster here through this. For the toms, I have, again, the Pro MB. I have the Pro MB, same things before, just trying to reduce cymbal bleed. And then I'm going silencer for the toms. You know exactly what these plugins do by this point, so I'm not going to go into the settings. The silencer has settings for toms, kick, top, and bottom snare. Just go with what sounds good to you, and the silencer will do just fine. So I'm going to breeze through this. The toms basically have duplicated effects. I have basically the same processing on every single tom. I have the Studer. I have a lot of high-end boost for the rack tom. Let's see. Let's go to an area where there is some toms. Okay. That's raw, completely unprocessed. Now let's put on the tape machine. You hear just a little bit more of a high-end boost. It's very subtle, but you hear it, and that's with the tape saturation. Next, I put the Neve 1073 through it, and I put a good chunk of high-end boost with this, and this added a lot of character to the toms. There we go. Now we can hear the attack of the toms much clearer. Here's without, and here it is with. Now we can hear the snappiness and the attack of the tom. Next, I have the SSL. Again, 4.61, boosting at 1.7 dB. I don't have any high-pass filters on this. I reduced 7.7 dB at 52.52 kilohertz, so 520 hertz. And yeah, I don't even have a high-pass filter on it. Let's listen without. And then with. Adding a little bit of oomph to the toms. Next, I have one of my favorite compressors I've ever used, and that is the Distressor. This sounds so good on anything that you put it through. So for toms and drums, this is just a no-brainer as far as what compressor to use. I have a 6:1 ratio, attack 5, release just under 2, and all I did was level match the input to have roughly between 4 and 6 dB of gain reduction, and I adjusted the output to where it sounds the same with and without the compressor on. So I basically did the same thing on the floor tom. Again, the Studer, the Neve, the SSL, and the Distressor. So let's hear both toms with no processing. And then let's hear them with processing. Just what a difference this processing makes. Yeah, I didn't realize just how much of a difference it was. This is the first time I'm hearing this in a couple days, and I honestly don't remember what they sounded like raw versus processed. What a difference. So I have the Verb Suite Classic. I have the FG16X medium at 379. Let's hear it with that on. It would help if I turned on the processing. It would help if I turned on the bus. Sort of the same way of thinking that I did with the snare drum and the plate reverb. Yeah, this sounds fantastic. Overheads, I have, again, every instance of a input. I am printing everything to tape. I have the Studer, and let's go back to where we were listening to before. I have the filter for high frequencies up a little bit here on the pre-EQ just to add a little more character to the overheads. Next, I have the SSL main channel. I have it slightly boosted at 2 dB at 6.3K. I have a 10 dB reduction of 700 hertz, and I have a high pass filter at 165. So here it is with it off, and then I'll turn it on. I want my overheads to be cymbal mics. If we were in a studio environment, I would mix my overheads a little bit differently to capture the whole kit and complement each other. But as you heard, with the EQ off, it captured everything else, and I want every other track to be like its own identity. I don't want the overheads to interfere with the processing of the other tracks. So in this instance, I use my overheads as cymbal mics. So I took out as much as I could, and I have these just as cymbals. Next, I have the Neve 1073. And then finally, finish it off with the 1176, which is a no-brainer as far as compressors go for overheads especially. And I have this so the compressor is only activating when a snare drum is hit. I don't want to squash the shit out of the overheads. Again, in a different environment, in a studio environment, I may mix it differently. But for this, I just wanted the overheads to be cymbal mics, and I want the hit of the snare to be from the snare channel. I don't want to hear that much of the snare in the overheads. And also, if you squash the snare a little bit in the overheads, it adds just a little bit more character from the snare drum itself. So that is my drum processing. Last thing I have, sorry, I lied. The last thing I have is the SSL bus compressor on my drum bus. So I'm going to play everything as it is, and then I'll turn on the bus compressor. Again, I just wanted a little bit of glue with that. And let's actually listen to all of the drums as they are, both raw and processed. So here is the entire drum set, raw as it was recorded. And here is the drum set processed. All right, let's move on to bass guitar. And bass is among the easiest instruments to mix and get right. You really, if you have a great bass recording, you're 90% of the way there. So for bass, I have, again, the Studer. I took out a lot of the high-end frequency because let's just play it as it is raw, because for some reason, his dark glass amp just sounded really twiny with his EQ setting. I don't know what his EQ setting was that night, but it just came in really, really twiny. Listen for yourself. So let's reduce that high end a little bit here. Let's listen to the Studer, what it did. So here is where a lot of EQing is going on. There's a little bit here and there on the low ends that need a little bit of touching up, but a lot of the work is on the upper mids right here. So let's hear it without, and then I'll turn it on. So for this, you know, normally I would like a little bit of twang in the bass, but there was just too much of that going on. The upper mids and the high end was pretty much unusable with this recording. So the bass just happened to be in this mix, just the low end. And the guitars are going to complement that, but I have to work with what was recorded. There's no way I can just, you know, put this through a magical amp simulator and generate a clean bass tone. And I certainly don't want to have the bass player come in and re-record and redub his bass recording on an entire set. This happened months ago. Why waste our time doing that? Might as well just work with what we have. So next on the chain is the SSL channel strip. I have the low pass filter all the way down to 3000, and I don't have a high pass filter on this at all. I took out 20 dB gain reduction with a 1.7 Q at 550 hertz, and from 1.5K onward, I took out -4 dB. So again, just a lot more high end. I'm literally just killing the high end on this. So here's without, and then I'll put it on. The good thing is, with all of that high end killing, essentially, you now clearly hear the low end of the bass guitar, and you can actually hear the different notes that he's playing. So that's what I was going for, and that's what I wanted. The next thing on the list is the distressor, and ask any metal engineer out there, the distressor on bass is, you really can't go wrong with this. I have a 6:1 ratio. And again, just reducing between 4 to 6 dB. Attack is 5, release is 5. And yeah, here's what it is without it, and I'll put it on. And finally, we have the SSL multi-band compressor. This takes essentially the same sort of tech and circuitry of the bus compressor and duplicates it 3 times over for low, mids, and highs. And can't really ask for a better multi-band compressor than this. I love this thing. So here it is without, and then I'll put it on. What I'm doing is I am, again, just containing more of the high end with any little tings that may come through. This solves it, and this basically glues everything together. So here it is without, and then I'll put it on. So here is the bass guitar with no processing at all on it, and then I will put everything on. Again, just what a difference this makes. So I think what would be cool now is to hear the drums and the bass, which are the foundation of literally every song ever. Let's hear the drums and bass with no processing, and then I will put all the processing on the drums and bass, one effect at a time. Let's move on to what I think you all are looking forward to the most, which is guitars. So this, he recorded from his Mesa amp in a PV Invective 4x12 cab. The cab is made up of Celestion V30 speakers and Celestion Creambacks. I don't know what speakers which in that cab, but I know they are in an X pattern. So if you're looking at the cab, it's this one and this one are the V30s. The other two are the Creambacks. I don't know which is which, like I said, but all I know is I mic'd the bottom right speaker. I mic'd it, of course, with an SM57. And if the middle of my hand right here is the center of the speaker, right? I mic'd it just like this with the SM57. Mic'd in a sweet spot, aiming towards the center of the cone, works every time. So let's hear the guitar with no processing on it whatsoever, and then I will turn on the Studer, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so there's a little bit that needs to be worked on this. There's a little too much of the high end. We really didn't have time to test it in A and B miking positions. The only thing that I had to do was just mic it up the best I could, the way I would in any live situation, and really honestly hope for the best. There was no, it didn't go over to PA, so I didn't have to worry about EQing it. So really, this was just for capturing, and if it sounded like shit, then, well, that's on me. But thankfully, it's workable. And what we have here is the Pro Q3. I took a little bit out at 3200, 4900, and 9400. Just a little bit of frequencies that were bothering me and cutting through everything else. Let's listen to it without, and then I'll turn it on. Okay, that took care of all of the pain frequency problems, and that took care of all of the issues that I had there. Now, really, the rest is just sweetening it up. Okay, so the next effect I have on it is the SSL guitar strip. And basically what I use this for is my high and low pass filter and any reduction EQ that I want to do. There's a drive effect down here that models guitar or bass amp. Really doesn't sound that good unless you have a dry guitar going into it, like a DI track. And there's a compressor on this, but I don't really compress guitars. So I use this for the high pass, low pass, and a little reduction EQ. That's it. And what I really like about this plugin is if you turn on the auto listen and just click and hold whatever EQ knob you want to adjust, you only hear that and what it's affecting. If I want to take off the low pass filter, you'll hear it. It will show you what exactly you're rolling off. So let's just listen to it. So as you heard, it only took off what I absolutely needed to take off, and you heard all the garbage that was being taken out. So I love the way this plugin sounds, and I really love what it does, and it helps me get my guitars sounding as good as I want them to. I took a little bit of 500, took 2.1 dB, just 2 dB, around 500, and yeah, off and then on. With the high pass at 110, that leaves all of the low end for the bass guitar. So up next on the guitar chain is arguably the biggest game changer plugin I have ever come across. And I'm willing to mark this, and I'm willing to die on this hill. This is the most significant plugin I think any of us could ever use for the foreseeable future. And this plugin is the reason why I bought the Universal Audio Spark package. As soon as I found out that this plugin came with it, I'm like, screw spending the $300 to buy this plugin alone. I am going to buy the entire Spark collection, and I'm glad I did because their plugins, to me, just sound night and day better than the Slate plugins. But this is the Sound City Studios Room Reverb. And if you can see on here, we have two different modes. We have reverb, which means we can turn whatever we send this plugin into playing like it is in Sound City Studios as a reverb. Or if you have a recording and you want to turn a dry room mic into a Sound City room mic, you can do that too on this plugin. So if you have two room mics in a drum room and it sounds really dry and you want to add some room and life to it, just turn it on remic mode in drums and you're good. This does so many wonderful things to a mix, and it's scary how good this room is. So I have this on a guitar track. First off, it's off, so let's listen to what we have just to refresh our ears. This is what the guitar sounds like going into the Sound City plugin. It sounds all right, but it could be a little more lively. So that's what I have the Sound City plugin for. So I have it on PA Live because I wanted a bigger, livelier sounding guitar. And as you can see down here, we have a close mic option. We have a room 1 and room 2. We have different microphones with different polar patterns, and you can really just customize this. There's endless combinations to this. So what I don't have the close mic activated just because it didn't sound right to me. I'm using this just for reverb, so I want all of the room mics. So room 1, I have the KM84 in the cardioid pattern. And then I have room 2, the U67 Neumanns. And I have both of them set to as far away from the quote-unquote PA as it's going. And let's solo the wet just so you can hear the plugin in effect. It adds so much width and space to whatever you put it in. So I have it at about 25% wet solo. Let's have it again all the way wet, and then I'll put it to where I had it. Finally, let's have it off and then on. It adds just a little bit of the air, roominess, and I'm flabbergasted at how good this thing sounds. This plugin also has some processing on it. So you could put an equalizer, you can add dynamics onto this, and you could put it in their reverb chambers, which is what I did on this. So the EQ, I set the low end to 220, reduced it just a little bit because I don't want a bunch of low end in my reverb. I have a tiny bit of boost in the high end at 10K, and then I have a little boost in the mids at 7.2K. And the chamber, I have it set to the R121 microphone with a very long decay, with just with the amount being in relatively the 1 o'clock position. So again, with it off, I absolutely love this thing, and when I get to showing you how this plugin works in a drum mix, that's going to be next level, guys. And then finally, I have the multi-bus comp just to control the low ends here. And I don't have this activated unless it's unless he's going dun 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 in the very, very low chunks of the guitar. I don't compress guitars. I normally don't put any type of compression on it. So I have the low end capturing just the dun 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 dun, the low end chunks, and this is just kissing the threshold. Again, just to contain it for when he hits his boost pedal for a solo. That's it. So again, here is my guitar processing completely off. On. So let's hear instruments with no processing and then with processing. So let's turn everything off so you can hear exactly what everything sounds like completely raw. And let's hear it with everything on again. This live mix is starting to sound like a studio mix. And really, I'm not paid by Universal Audio. I'm not paid by any plugin manufacturer out there. But I would love to be. I just really am a fan of the SSL plugin collection and the UA Spark. I think they are a night and day difference from what I was using before with the Slate plugins. And for, I think they're each like $14 a month now, the SSL and the UA. I think it's just a no-brainer if you want to pick these up yourself. And finally, let's go to vocals. Now, on the main vocal track, when there is a exponential period of time when he is not singing at all, or in this case screaming, I deleted the audio. But if there's like a little bit of like a second or two gap between vocal and lines of the song, I just left it there because I really don't want to delete all that audio. That would just take way too much time. So here is the raw vocal track as it was recorded. Now, Uncle Menace here, he holds the mic very, very close to his mouth and he projects very loudly, so the signal to noise ratio is really, really good. Not the signal to noise ratio, the source to bleed, if you want to call it that, it's very, very clear. So this was a easy vocal track to process.
What you gonna do now? What you gonna say? No, they won't listen to you anyway.
So the first thing I do is I have a noise gate on his vocal to just help take care of that bleed. And I use the SSL X gate. And here's what that sounds like.
What you gonna do now? What you gonna say? No, they won't listen to you anyway.
Next, I have, of course, as every track on my input, I have the Studer, and I have the shelf, the pre-tape EQ up a little bit here, and then I have the low end and the high end boosted a little bit here on the Studer. So here it is without.
What you gonna do now? What you gonna say? No, they won't listen to you anyway.
With.
What you gonna do now? What you gonna say? No, they won't listen to you anyway.
I think this plugin made all the world of a difference between with it off and on, and the significant, impact of the overall sound. This tape emulator is fantastic for that. Again, here it is without, and then I will turn it on.
What you gonna do now? What you gonna say? No, they won't listen to you anyway. What you gonna do now? What you gonna say? No, No, they won't listen to you anyway.
Man, that speaks volume for the plugin itself. So I have him going through the Neve 1073. Here it is without, and then I'll put it on.
What you gonna do now? What you gonna say? No, they won't listen to you anyway.
Next, I have a de-esser, and again, I'm using the SSL DS.
What you gonna do now? What you gonna say?
Just helping containing all the tss in the vocal. Next is the SSL channel strip. I am boosting from 6.3K upwards at 3.7 dB. I am reducing 630 Hertz at minus 2.6 dB. And I have a high pass filter at 139.4. Here it is without. And I will put it on first off. And also, sorry, I have a low shelf boost at 285 at 4.7. Just add a little more low end to his vocal.
What you gonna do now? What you gonna say? No, they won't listen to you anyway.
And then finally, I have the distressor. Attack is 5, release is 5. Ratio is 4:1. And I just matched the output to the input, and I think I have it between, again, 4 to 6 dB gain reduction.
What you gonna do now? What you gonna say? No, they won't listen to you anyway.
So here is my processing with nothing on, and then with everything on.
What you gonna do now? What you gonna say? No, they won't listen to you anyway. What you gonna do now? What you gonna say? No, they won't listen to you anyway.
What a difference that makes. Oh my God. That, again, that's this Studer plugin, man. Again, I'm not sponsored by Universal Audio, but this is the best tape emulator I've ever heard. This is if I want to saturate anything or just add a little bit of analog crunch to it, I will immediately go for this. So his vocal track is going to, again, the #1 game changer plugin I've ever used, the Sound City plugin. And this is a vocal solo. And as you can see here, you have a little bit of you have a couple microphones here. And what looks like, yeah, this looks like, look, they even animated some headphones and a music stand to where the singer is. That's pretty cool. The level of detail is amazing. So you have the two options here. You could have solo or group. And since this is a solo vocal, I have all 3 microphones going on here. I have the close mic, which is the C12. Close 2 is a U67. And then the room mics are KM54s. The close mics are as close as possible to the source, and the KM54s are locked in at max. So, and I have this obviously all the way in the wet because I have the reverb bust out to its own track. So let's hear it without, and then I will turn it on.
What you gonna do now? What you gonna say? No, they won't listen to you anyway.
Just adds a lot more width and character to his vocal chain. So next I have the backing vocals. Now, again, I'm just going to breeze through this because it's relatively the same amount of processing. I have the Studer, then I have the Neve 1073, a little bit of a boost there on the top end. De-esser, same deal. And SSL native channel. I didn't boost anything because the background vocals should be behind the main vocal. So if you just boost the background vocal, you essentially should just have like 3 main vocals. I don't want that. But for the backing tracks, backing vocal, I have 630 Hertz reducing at 2.5 dB. high pass filter at 139. And again, I am still boosting a little bit at 285 at about 5 dB because I want a little more oomph from the low end of these backing vocals. And then finally, I have them going through the distressors. I should say, Spencer used a vocal processor to duplicate and double his track. So if it sounds a little robot-y, that's his processing effect that he put into the PA.
Shut down! Beat down! Shut down! Beat down!
So that's without, and then here is with everything on.
Shut down! Beat down! Shut down! Beat down!
Again, I also have the backing vocals going to an ensemble. For the Sound City, I have vocal group because it is a group backing vocal. I have it in reverb mode. And I have all 3 mics going. So I have the close room and room 2. Close is C12. Room 1 is U67 and room 2 is KM84. And everything is maxed out as far as it can, except for this one. It is fixed at the minimum setting. So once again, here it is without any processing.
Shut down! Beat down!
Here it is with the Sound City.
Shut down! Beat down!
It would help if I, turned on the bus. Stupid.
Shut down! Beat down!
Again, just adds width to it. And now we're going to add some more reverb on top of that. Here is the pure plate reverb. And let's just get a second to go over my setting. So low cut is 90, pre-delay is 0. I don't have any EQ boost. And I essentially just turned this on and kept it mostly at default. I have it set in a 1 o'clock position. Because again, I wanted more of the quote-unquote room sound of Sound City to come through. So here it is without any processing, and then I'll turn it on.
Shut down! Beat down! Shut down! Beat down!
All right, so now that we have all of our vocal processing done, let's go to the vocal bus. So the first one that I have is the Pro Q3. And what I have here is a little bit of reduction at 3800 and 8500 because they're in the mix of some of the lyrics where he was moving. There's a little bit of feedback that happens, so this just controls that. Next is the Neve 1073. Again, just a tiny little bit boost of high end, and again, a tiny boost of low end, just to give it just a little more character. And then here is a fantastic bus compressor that I love. This is the Fairchild 670, and this just glues everything together. So I'm going to play the chorus of Shot Down, and I'm going to have the Neve off, and I will play it with it off and then on, and then I'll do the same thing for the Fairchild.
Shut down! Beat down! Get the ride the same old sound a bit. Shut down! Beat down! Get the ride the same old sound a bit. Shut down! Beat down! Get the ride the same old sound a bit. Shut down! Beat down! Get the ride the same old sound a bit.
And then next, finally, we have the ever so reliable SSL bus compressor. Again, just to glue everything together.
Shut down! Beat down! Get the ride the same old sound a bit. Shut down! Beat down! Get the ride the same old sound a bit. Shut down! Beat down! Get the ride the same old sound a bit. Shut down! Beat down! Get the ride the same old sound a bit.
And that is my vocal chain. The only other thing I have on any bus before I go to my main mix bus is a Pro Q3 on the instruments bus. and I learned this trick from Streaky on YouTube. Again, I will link the lesson of how I learned it in the description, but essentially what you do is you put on a Pro Q3 on your instrument bus, which is your everything except vocal. You match EQ with a sidechain to the vocal bus, right? And then you match EQ it. You eliminate everything below 100 hertz, like all the EQ points that Pro Q3 will map out. You delete everything that is below the threshold of 0 right here. And then you reduce everything to these tiny little points here. And what that does is these are the core frequencies of the vocal chain. And if you put these on as like a little EQ, it acts as a little tiny compressor in the Pro Q3. And what this does is anytime the vocal goes through, it will reduce all of these frequencies in the instrument bus by 2 or 3 dB tops. And what this will do is it will allow the vocal to sit perfectly with the instruments. I will link the lesson from Streaky below in the description so he can explain it better to you guys of what this technique is. But again, I completely stole this technique from Streaky, so thank him for that. Let's listen to everything. I will play the chorus and with all my instrument processing on, and then I will turn on the Pro Q3 midway through it. Again, it's just a tiny, subtle difference, but you heard the vocal just like almost bleed through the mix just that much better. I didn't adjust any levels. I didn't adjust any faders. All I did was turn on this essentially multi-band EQ. So that is everything. Let's do a before and after of everything off, and then I will turn everything on. All right, guys, we have a finished mix. Let's get on to the mix bus and mastering process. So for the mix bus, I have the SSL bus compressor. You can pretty much find this plugin or analog effect on virtually almost every single record that you listen to. And here it is with it on. I love the way that this glues everything together, and that's what I'm going for. I use this to glue everything. I don't use this to add punch, clarity. I use this to glue everything together. Next is the final slate plugin that I have on the chain. I love the way that this Air EQ sounds, but I mainly just use this for my master bus reduction EQ. If I need anything that needs to be taken out, I usually load up this EQ. But what I mainly use this for now is my final high and low pass filters. When you're mixing and you get everything going the way it is, you need a little bit of containment for anything that may go too far low, too far high. So I have a high pass filter, 30 hertz, whoops, let me change that back to 30. 30 hertz at 12 dB per octave. And then I have a low pass filter at 17, again at 12 dB per octave. And I have just a tiny bit of makeup gain. And then next is one final instance of the Studer tape, because I am now printing my mix to tape. Again, I'm not adding any more high end to this. I'm not adding any more low end to this. I'm just printing it to tape, that final little tiny bit of analog glue. And then here is, again, one of the best mastering compressor plugins I ever heard. This is the Capital Mastering Compressor, again from UAD. I have the attack slow, release fast. I have the ratio set to the middle, and I have the output set to -6. So I adjust the threshold until it gets to about -1 dB. And this is the biggest, like, apart from a limiter, this is the biggest volume booster of the entire mastering chain. So here it is without. So finally, we have our limiter, and this is the Make Everything Go Loud Boom Boom plugin. I have the SSL X limit. I have my ceiling set to -0.3. I have the threshold set to -1 dB, and I increase the gain by 6 dB. And this has a real-time wave monitoring system. And really the main difference between this limiter and the FabFilter Pro L2 limiter, which is what I was using up until this one, sonically, at least from my ears, this just sounds more full. It has more character. And to me, this again, it says it right there on the plugin. There's a glue setting, there's a punch setting, there's auto, just let the plugin do whatever. There's a transparent setting, but I like the glue setting, and this limiter just glues everything else together. And to me, it just sounds better than the FabFilter. So that's what I went with. Again, whatever limiter you use, just make sure it sounds good to you. That's really all I can say. So here it is without, and then I'll turn it on. All right, guys, I think that's it. Let's do one final before and after. I'm going to obviously have the limiter off, and I think I will have, yeah, I'll just leave the limiter off, where we have everything off, and then I'll turn everything on. So here is the track as it was recorded, apart from the auto align and the phase correction and the time alignment. So this is raw. And here it is with everything on. All right, guys, that concludes the audio mix. Now let's get to the video part, and may my computer's graphics card forgive me for this, but here is a video tutorial of how I got everything looking the way it did. So I had 3 cameras for this shoot. I had my still camera, which is a Sony AX100 camcorder, and I have here's what the footage looked like completely raw. This doesn't have a log profile on it, so all I did was boost it a little bit, raise the gain. There's a lot of noise here because the place where we shot this at is, well, it's really dark. Let's just say that. It's a bar. It's not a music venue. There's no lights. Got to work with what we got. So my main, point and shoot camera, which is where you're going to see most of the footage at, is the A7R5, which is what I'm filming on right now. And the lens I'm using is also what I'm using right here talking to you guys now, which is a Sigma 14-24 2.8. Here is what the footage looked like raw. And what I did here, actually this isn't, okay, this is what it looked like completely raw. This is log footage. I filmed in S-Log3, and thankfully the new Final Cut update, it has Sony S-Log3 S-Gamut 3, which is what I recorded the footage on. No need for a LUT. It does it for me now in Final Cut, so yay, thank you Final Cut. So what I have here is I boosted it a little bit, made it look a little less contrasty because of the LUT that I'm going to put on it and the way that I'm going to make it look. And the third camera that my buddy Jack held and mainly focused on Frank the bass player and Jimmy the drummer here is the Sony A7 III, and the lens he used was the Sony 50mm 1.5. So again, he shot it in S-Log3 Gamut 3, and here's what the footage looks like completely raw and log. And again, just thank you Final Cut for finally adding in-camera log corrector for Sony cameras. Really, really love that update. And here is the final mix of everything on the audio. All right, so once I compiled everything into a multicam clip and put it on a timeline, synced everything up, it is very easy now for me to edit all of my clips. So once I edited everything down, here is the final multicam edit. And let's take off what I have effects-wise. Let's find a nice let's find a nice frame for reference of what I did as far as my edits go. Right here. Let's go here. So let's turn off all the effects that I have on my timeline. So the first thing I did was have Final Cut's effect called 50s TV. And to me, it crappened up the quality a little bit, which is what I'm going for, because we have the band is a very raw and very lively, amateur type of vibe to them. I don't say amateur as in like they're an amateur band. I say this as like they're an underground punk rock vibe, which is why all the cameras were held with hands instead of, on gimbals. As much as I love a nice, super smooth gimbal clip, it's not what this show called for. We filmed this in a dive bar. We're not really looking for cinematic quality here. We even had a guy, our friend Eddie, hold the light actually that I'm using right now to light myself, which is a Lume Cube panel. He literally just handheld this because I didn't have another tripod to, put it on. And the adapter that I would have used to put on top of the hot shoe on the AX100 camcorder, which was my still cam, I lost it. So I had no way of clamping the light onto any source. So our friend Eddie, bless his soul, he literally just held it the entire time. So all the light that you see on Uncle Menace right here, that is from this Lume Cube panel. That is the only lighting that we had. And by comparison, the Lume Cube panel is no bigger than the size of a phone. So this little light packs a punch. So anyway, back to the effects. So we had the 50s TV set up, and then we had another Final Cut effect called aged film. I wanted it to just make it grainy. And again, I'm not Martin Scorsese. I'm not looking for a, you know, cinematic masterpiece here. But I have realistic grain cranked all the way up. I want this to purposely look like bad footage. A lot of all the dust, all the hair. I don't have any jitter amounts on it. Then I have my custom LUT, which is what took all this into a black and white. So to create your own LUT and your own, you know, customizable look, if you don't want to use the color grading effects that your video editing software has, whether you're a Final Cut user, you're a Premiere Pro, DaVinci Resolve, whatever you use, if you don't want to use that stock color grading, what you do is you find a good frame of reference, you save that individual frame, you import that frame into Adobe Lightroom, and then you edit it like you would edit a photo. And then there's a third-party app. If you want a full tutorial on this, I'd be happy to show you, but there is then a third-party app called LUT Generator. I'll leave a link of this in the description too. If you know anything about photo editing, you can just save this as a JPEG with their image processor that you copy your Lightroom settings on, convert it to a cube, and then you can use that as a LUT in Final Cut. I know I just glossed over all of this, and if you are confused by this and you want a full-on tutorial on how to do this, I know I'm not a photo video editing channel, but if you are looking to edit your first music video for your band and you need a unique look and you want a full tutorial on how to do this, I'll be happy to make one for you. But in general, that is the process I use to create my LUT, which I then applied to my Final Cut footage here. And then just for added measure, I added a little bit more of a blue tint to the full look. I was happy with it being full black and white, but I wanted just a little bit of blue in there. And that's how I got my full look. So you can even see a little bit of dust fragments here, a little bit of hair. This is not all on the film. This is the Final Cut effect. So there's the full footage. There it is, completely edited. All right, guys, so that now completes the video editing section. Again, I'm not a video editing channel. If you want a full-on process of how to do all of this, I'd be happy to show you. I know I glossed over a lot of things here, but in general, this is how you guys get your first live performance recorded, mixed, and looking really good the way you want it to showcase on your social media page, YouTube, whatever, to attract new fan bases. Now guys, we worked with this song and you heard a little bit of one song the entire video. With that said, guys, here is the full version of Shot Down and Move On from this show from Menace and the Hellfire. Take care, guys. Peace.
Wake up! What's all it? What you gonna do now? What you gonna say? No, they won't listen to you anyway. Look at your heart. They want you failed. Just another reflection that's let you down. What you gonna do? Now what you gonna say? What you gonna say now? Lockdown! did you hold? What did you find? Just another reflection. Who left behind? Look in the soul. We're talking you. Now you gotta do now. What you gotta do? What you gonna do? Now what you gonna say? What you gonna say now? Not now, be now. Think around the same old town to be. Not now, be now. Think around the same old town to be. Not now, be now. Think around the same old town to be. Not now, be now. Think around the same old town to be. Think around the same old town to be. Shot down, beat down. Think around the same old town to be. Shot down, beat down, kick around. Been around